management, and more importantly, what this even means. So, as I've said before, this is not about what we do necessarily between the hours of 7 to 4 or 7 to 5. This is all about managing our days, the 24 hours we have, and it's, in some cases, how we manage our activities, because I don't get to manage the clock, but I do manage my activities. So it's all things in personal productivity, self-management. Some of this, some of you might say, well, Greg, I'm a procrastinator, Well, and that may be the case, but we need to ask ourselves, why do I procrastinate? And we'll talk a little bit about that later. Self-discipline, are we able to keep ourselves on task for the right activities? Do we get bored with certain activities? And then lastly, life management. And this is not a knock to betting, but the simple fact is, as you all indicated to me at the start, you have other jobs. Not that you have a night hustle or anything like that. You have kids, families, hobbies, sports, whatever it might be. So it's managing your life. And I'm sure a lot of you do have aspirations, in whatever that is, whether they are all at betting aspirations or there's something outside of this. But let's address the 500-pound gorilla in the room. What are the problems with time management? What are the challenges with time management?
Not enough time.
Not enough time. We got the old proverbial 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bucket. No question. What else? Yeah, you come in this morning, or maybe let's say yesterday, because yesterday you came in, you were just bright-eyed and ready to hit the ground running, got your cup of joe in one hand, you sit down and you go, I'm ready to do it. And then you hit your voicemail button. Oh my gosh, and there's just a litany of problems, and you go, ugh. So we got these fires that pop up. Some are just simple brush fires, some are dumpster fires and tire fires, and they become a lot more complicated. There's another word that I use. Some of you, one, it's in my last name, but I always, when I used to say my last name, I'd go S-C-H-O-P-P. And everyone would go, oh, O-P-P, like that Naughty by Nature song. And I go, some of you are a lot younger or older and don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Some of you do know what I'm talking about. That being said, I would say OPP, other people's problems. That stuff that rolls downhill. And if you're at the bottom of the hill, there's a lot of stuff rolling. So there's no question of those OPPs. What else? What's another thing that impacts time management? Traffic, yeah. Well, it's Atlanta. You don't have any traffic problems. What are you complaining about? Yeah, I mean, it's what I refer to it as, it's the things that, if we were just to look at doing the work. But remember when we built the bridge, there were things, primary time, secondary time, and recoverable lost time. And I know not everyone was here for the bridge, but we talked about primary time is spent doing the work. Secondary time is planning to do the work. Recoverable lost time is spent not doing any of the first two. The point of this is, what does traffic mean? Is that a secondary time or recoverable lost time?
Lost time.
It's lost time, but we technically still had to get to the job site or the office. So part of it is a little bit of both, but we didn't anticipate an extra 30 minutes of traffic or an extra hour of traffic. And it's the time spent kind of getting prepared, to actually do the work. Well, that kind of is ancillary, but it's part of what could impact how we spend the rest of our day. What else?
Distractions.
Distractions. Give me an example of distraction, Darcy.
Something pops up on your phone, Facebook, any social media.
Any social media, absolutely. My favorite are the cell phones that vibrate. Some of yours have done that. Yesterday and the day before, the guys in San Antonio I was with, their service manager was in the session with me. His cell phone didn't vibrate, but it had the strobe light feature. So out of the corner of my eye, like the entire morning, because he sat next to me, all I can see is his phone going blink, 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 and I'm going to have an epileptic seizure here in a moment because it's like, just, like this strobe light constantly is going off. But that's a distraction. Is it a distraction to him? There's a funny thing. In the previous company I worked for, obviously we had our desk phones like most companies do. But when you would get a voicemail, there was a little light on the top of the handset, and it was red. So, there would be those days maybe I was working on a bid or working on a big change order. So I'd say, okay, I'm going to put the do not disturb button on my phone and not answer any, because I need to focus. So you start working, but out of the corner of your eye, little red light pops up. And you're kind of like, So you're trying to work, but you're like, I wonder who it was, So what do we do? So, we occasionally have to take a baseball hat or whatever, put it on there, because sometimes those visual distractions impact our time. What else?
Poor weather.
Just poor planning in general, weather. But part of this, and it's interesting that you both said planning and kind of the weather, one of which I control, the other of which I don't, just like I don't control traffic. We can only plan to a certain level. And then kind of life gets in the way after that point in time. But part of our job is to figure out, are we doing enough planning that secondary time? For instance, when it comes to the traffic, I know I still have to drive to the job site. Am I being hyper optimistic to think that, I'll get to the job site across Atlanta in 30 minutes? I can't get to the intersection in 30 minutes. What am I fooling myself? Also, am I using my time appropriately because I've thought it out and prepared? For instance, one of the things you didn't mention was meetings. Can meetings be, a time suck? And we talked about this last time, we're going to revisit it again, but that's the other one, that's POC. Purpose, agenda, and limits. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So, we talk about planning. First of all, figuring out from a daily perspective, what is that, our estimated time or durations? Do we assume for interruptions or do we expect 100% productivity? The answer is we should probably never assume productivity. For my estimators in the room, if I was estimating putting that masonry wall up, and I see contractors make this mistake all the time. They go, oh yeah, it's going to take a day to do that whole wall right there. A piece of cake, no problem. Once again, also, is that working in the summer, in Atlanta, in the heat, but we're also going to have thunderstorms. So should we anticipate 100% efficiency, or should we expect that we operate at 80% efficiency? And think of it like having fluff. It's not being lazy, that's just being realistic. For instance, we have taken breaks in these sessions. Some of it is because I know most of you are not familiar with sitting for 6, 7 hours. So getting you up and getting the blood flowing is important, like the young lady in the back. I get it, folks. I am probably the world's worst student. I could not sit and hear the drone of my voice for 6 or 7 hours. I give you credit. But at the same time, the body can only endure so much. So for instance, if you work at your desk and do you operate from the time you show up, and I'll say 8 to 5, just for sake of discussion. Are you active from 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock? The answer is no. It's just not realistic. You go to the restroom, you have lunch, you may walk around, you may see a friend. Yeah, you're efficient when you work at Benning, but for the most part, you also don't work at 100% utilization. And then there's this last piece here, personal and professional. Time management is not just about, okay, I need to organize my task list. Those tasks are to hopefully make for a better you in the long run. And I'm not going to get all philosophical or soft on you, but everyone in here should have goals. I was going to use this story later, but this is a good segue. I think it was the class of like 1950 to 1955 at Harvard University. They decided to say, we want to do a study to figure out what's the net worth, using a financial example used before, of the graduating class. They wanted to study this class over a period of time. So they asked the graduating class what you wanted to be long-term, and did you write down your goals? 5% of the graduating class wrote down goals. And it was like, I want to be a doctor, in the future. So I'm graduating with my bachelor's degree, but you can be a doctor, a lawyer, a politician, whatever. Then, fast forward to 50 years later. That's when most people are probably about at their retirement age. They went back and said, okay, of the 5% that wrote their goals, objectives down for their life, the 5%'s net worth outweighed the 95% of the people that didn't write down their goals. Now, were the 95%, were they unsuccessful? No, I mean, I'm assuming they went to Harvard, they're smart folks. I mean, it's no Florida or anything like that, but I mean, they probably were successful, but the 5%, their net worth exceeded that of the entire 95%. And the point is it just because they wrote down their goals? No, there's probably other things, but you can't just think it. You gotta ink it. This doesn't mean you can say, well, Greg, how does that apply to me? I don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a politician. No, but you could say, I want to become the best project superintendent Benning has ever seen. Okay, how are you doing it? What does that mean? How do you measure that? And we'll talk about that a little bit later. You might say, well, I want to, work is it's not as important to me as my family life. Or maybe you're active in your church. Well, I want to be a deacon in our church, or the youth minister or something like that. I'm not here to judge anyone's goals. Have goals. That's all I want to say. Have goals, whatever they are, but then work the plan. Come up with a plan, just like we'd say, we want to do this project successfully. Okay, great. How are you going to do it? Walk me through the steps to get there. So when we talk about planning, we kind of start at that strategic level. We're going to actually take a different approach. We're going to start at the ground level and work our way back up. But strategic level, Benning wants to be the greatest contractor in our market. That's a pretty generalized statement, what I just said. Okay, what does that mean? What does best mean? What does market? I mean, obviously you work in a lot of different regions and geographies and niches. The answer is, I get it. Those are all strategic type things. So we want to figure out, how do we know midterm and long term? I know a lot of you have seen on the news, I actually watched, was it last week tonight, John Oliver, and he talked about the Mount Everest climbing. So have y'all been following that on the news lately? Like how there's only a window that you can climb Mount Everest. It's like 2 weeks because the weather is usually so bad and it's too treacherous. So there's 2 weeks, and there's two ways to get up Mount Everest. Kind of the Tibetan side and the Nepal side. That's it, two sides. But they show the lines of people waiting to kind of climb Mount Everest, and it looks like a line at Disney World. I mean, they showed the video footage, and I thought it was Space Mountain, not Mount Everest. And they were just people just standing there waiting, and people die because they kind of have to figure out how to get there. But if you've ever climbed a mountain, when I went and did Stone Mountain, many years ago, obviously it's not Mount Everest, but you got kind of base camps as you go. Mainly because the body can only endure so much. But how do you know you're doing this thing? So if you want to be the best superintendent, project manager, estimator, administrator at Benning, great. That's up here. That's the tip of Mount Everest. How do you know at base camp, at secondary camp, you're striving that? What's letting me know? Just like if I said, Greg wants to be healthier this next year. Great. That sounds like a very objective goal. How do I know if I'm getting there? And I use the phrase, you've heard me say this probably several times, it's the journey, not the destination. So what does my journey look like as we go forward? So, first thing we're going to look at is what I call urgent and important matrix. That sounds like a typical Gregg phrase, urgent and important. Well, at FMI, we also joke that anything we do can be put in a 2x2 matrix. Why? Because it's fun. But I guess the question is, what's the difference between urgency and importance? They certainly sound the same. You're shaking your head. What's the difference between urgency and importance?
Well, urgency is the time that it needs to be done now, doesn't necessarily mean it's the most important.
Exactly. Exactly. Urgency has the time moniker put on it. Important means it's very important, it has to get done. Everything you do in your life today will fit in one of those 4 boxes. I don't care what it is, it gets to fit in urgent, not urgent, important, not important, in that matrix, in that fashion. I don't care whether it's going to dinner with your spouse tonight, whether it's doing a cost report when you get done with me, or commuting home. It fits in that 2x2 matrix. Here's a couple things though. How we manage our life, things get shuffled in these 2x2 matrix quite a bit. So for instance, if I was to ask you right now to list all of your activities for today, you would put on here, go to training with Gregg. And then we would say, is that important, urgent, both? You know, and obviously we would all say it's very important and incredibly urgent. I get it. However, what are you all laughing back there? Hey, I was being so nice to you. I'm teasing you. So the moral of the story is, as we think about where things get shuffled, but now let's try this to see where things fit. And I'm going to ask you a couple trick questions and see how you do. Invoicing your customer, a little segue from a few minutes ago, is that urgent or important?
Important.
Important. Why do you think I'm saying it's not urgent? After spending an entire morning talking about finance, I'm going to just say it's not urgent. Gregg, how could you possibly say that? And I'm going to pick on the young lady in the back, only because I got to tease you. Why is it not urgent? Why is it important but not urgent?
Because it's time sensitive, but it's not.
When do you bill your customers?
Once a month.
And what day of the month is that?
25th.
Fair enough? So let me ask you this. When does the 25th of the month occur?
The same every month.
Yeah, isn't it shocking? We got a running head start 12 times a year. We know when it's coming. However, if you wait till the last minute to do your bill, you go, oh crap. You know, Alden and his crew are going to get on me for not doing a bill.
Cat is.
Okay. Cat, I got my eye on you, yes. Are you like a bulldog? Never be so mean. What's going on here?
That's a nice thing.
See, y'all are mean to me.
I got your back, don't worry. Now, however, if you wait till the last minute, it's the 24th at 11 o'clock at night, as unrealistic as that sounds. Now is it urgent?
Yes.
Absolutely. But we had a running head start on it. So my point is, we have a situation here where tasks continually get shifted. And in some cases, for instance, training, and I'm only saying this because one, we're sitting here, and number two, it's near and dear to my heart. Clients all the time will say to me, Gregg, we got to train our people. They got to go to your training sessions. And heck, we don't even need you. We just need to do training. And I go, great, do it. But we're really, really busy. So what happens? It's important, but is it viewed with a lack of urgency? However, the older we get as companies, and more importantly, as we continue to, we can punt for so long. This whole concept of, we're not going to worry about training. We'll wait till next week to do some training. And then next week comes, and guess what? We're still busy. So we don't focus on talent development. Take the training out of it, just talent development. We keep punting on it. For instance, using the health example that I've used a couple times. You know, I go to my doctor twice a year. And, you know, what was that? God, you're throwing stuff at me, man. Wow. Wow, all right, I'll let you guys eat in a second. I mean, it's okay. Started 20 Shades of Red. So, I go to my doctor 2 times a year, and he'll say to me, Greg, you know, we got to do something here, brother. My point is, do I wait? Do I kind of go, you know what, that's important, I've got to do it, and I've got to do it now? Or do I wait and punt till the week before and I go, oh crap, let me go do a quick diet or crash diet just to kind of do it, so that way I don't embarrass myself when I go to the doctor. The point is, things are always shifting, and what I will tell you is this: if you live your life in that upper left-hand quadrant all the time, you are heart attack waiting to happen. Folks, if we can't do a good job of prioritizing, for instance, if you put your to-do list together and everything is important and everything is urgent, one, you're not going to be able to do it all. It's just that simple. Because, once again, there's only 24 hours in a day. You got to start to reshuffle the deck and go, you know what? All right, I can't work out today, but I will work out tomorrow. And I'm not saying I'm procrastinating it, but it's just physically impossible. But we still say it's important. But we can only punt for so long. So the part that I wanted you to be thinking about in terms of, you know, kind of homework is taking your activities for, say, Monday, because obviously you're with me today, but when you hit the ground Monday, what will your list look like? And yes, I want everything on your list. I want everything from, I got to take my kids to school, got to pick them up at baseball practice, I've got to do my cost reports, got to call my customer, got to do blah, 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 blah. Got to brush my teeth. Hopefully we're all doing that. You know, take a shower. It's going to, and then what you do is once you have all those activities, now you got to put them in the boxes. And you got to see, come on, you got to see where you spend your time. And if you go, oh my gosh, everything is in the upper left-hand quadrant, we got to start to reshuffle that deck. So I'm going to hit the pause button here. I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Brad. If you'll, you can stand there or you can come up here, but I want to make sure you